you for joining us this lunch break. I know everyone's probably going to be multitasking a little bit today and eating their lunch on this time. So if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask. If you don't wish to voice, as Jonathan said, through the phone, feel free to type in the chat. And if I miss it, Jonathan will make sure that everyone has will vocalize what everyone's asking. So today we've been asked to talk about creating some special needs supports for military families, in particular to programming options. So Amy and I, Amy is the Special Needs and Inclusion Programmer at Petawawa MFRC. Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm here.
All right. So Jonathan, if you don't mind switching to the next slide for me.
Sure.
Perfect. So some of the things that we talked about of easy ways to get started, because not everyone has something established yet. So we're looking at this as perhaps you don't have anything in place at this point in time. So one good way to start for programming is to kind of figure out where to go is actually to start a parent support group. So this is something that's really easy to get going. It requires minimal resources. It's a great way to connect with families, and it's also a great way for you to have a chat with them and get their feedback as to what it is that they're looking for, in particular to whether it's resources available, whether it's program areas, guest speakers, that kind of thing. It's a great way for you to be able to have that one-on-one connection, have that conversation. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about parent support groups? You've got quite a lot of experience with them as well, especially with starting them up in Petawawa over the last couple of years.
Sure. So we see building a circle of support as being really important. So we encourage parents to come together. In Petawawa, we meet on the first Thursday evening of every month, and our goal is that parents will connect during the group and that they'll also connect outside the group. So we want them to have more people in their circle, to have a resource, someone they can have coffee with between meetings, someone who they can use to give each other breaks when they need a break, when they need to speak to someone else, and to learn more about their community. So our goal is to connect families, provide information and support during the meeting, but also to encourage families to connect outside of that meeting time so that they can continue to support each other in that way. So for us, we tend to have a guest speaker maybe not every month, but every couple of months, so that some meetings parents can just come and share and vent and talk about what's working well for them and what's not, talk about the resources. I get a chance to share what's happening here in Petawawa that might be of interest to them, and also some other things happening in the province that might be available to them. And then other times when we have a guest, we've had a pediatric occupational therapist come and do some make-and-take activities with them, really giving parents some tools, because we know that there aren't always a lot of resources in each community, and there are waiting lists for things, but if we can bring in a guest who can give you some tools to take home, something that you can work on with your own family, with your child, is a better way to support them, and we want to encourage that. So guests have been great. We also had someone come in and talk to parents about art and anxiety and how art can be used to support you as a parent, to think about your emotions and your priorities and just to take a breather. So that was another popular thing that we did in the last year to support parents, and really just let parents lead the conversation in terms of resources and connections, and have new families encouraged to come and talk about what they're looking for, and then the other parents are able to jump in and say, hey, I've been there, I dealt with that, have you talked to this person, and support people in that way. Arlene, anything you want to add from Trenton?
With regards to the resources aspect, so for any of you that are looking to, start this being your starting point to kind of figure out where you want to go from here, really all it takes is a room with some tables and chairs, some Kleenex, because there's always going to be that need at some point in time, and then just a staff that is familiar and comfortable with facilitating discussion. So keeping in mind that this is not a therapy group, that This is something that you're there to support them through, but you're not doing counseling, and that's the biggest thing, and it takes a lot of stress off of the staff that's facilitating them if you have that mindset going into it. One thing that so really you're looking at one staff, maybe two staff to facilitate a group. So, and you're looking at a group running for maybe an hour, hour and a half. The only other, resources that you really need for that is I do recommend having some type of refreshment or snacky stuff, because that tends to bring people through the door, especially if you're able to offer something like that. It also makes it a little bit more comfortable for everybody. If you can find a room, ideally that's a little less formal, makes people feel a little bit more comfortable. However, we understand that that's not always available. So we've done things in our boardroom. We've had groups run in our early on center before. It's really just dependent upon what space is available. Another thing to consider, if you have the capability, is childcare options. Because for a lot of our families that want to attend these because they want to connect with other families and kind of get to meet each other, get to kind of understand what's going on, get to share where they're at in the whole process, especially with kids' ages, and how people have succeeded through certain things, what are some of the challenges that they've had, is childcare is the big thing that holds them back, especially because we usually run parent support groups in the evening. As for our region, that seems to be the best time for a lot of our families is after hours, but the child care piece is a big part. So we've had that put in place to help that not become a barrier. I know some other areas run parent support groups during the day, like Kingston, I believe, runs a parent support group during the day. Petawawa, Amy, you run them in the evening. Is every Thursday evening, right?
Ours is 6:30 to 8. Yeah, ours is 6:30 to 8:30 on the first Thursday of the month.
Okay, so that's the other thing to consider. Now, with regards to this gives you, if you get this up and going, you're really just looking about, your advertising piece and getting the word out there. Your best way to be able to do that is through your community partners and through your other departments within your MFRC. So if they can send it out to their clients to give them a, hey, here's a heads up, I'm not sure if this meets your needs, but something to think about. And understanding what special needs definition is for your MFRC. So for us here, it's anybody and everybody that's experiencing difficulty in some area of development. So that could be learning disabilities, it could be going through that process, kind of going, there's a couple of red flags, but we're not sure. It could be confirmed diagnosis of ADHD or ASD or anything like that. So we open up to everybody, and it's not age specific either. And the reason why we don't do age specific is because of the fact people are going to learn from each other. So you might have somebody coming in with, their children are all, say, 5 and 6 years of age. You may have some that are 3, and you may have some that are now teenagers. They can relate to each other and be able to explain kind of how that process went and how those transitions through, developmental ages progressed and how the services changed throughout that time period as well. And it gives us a good way of getting the feedback from families as to where they're at, what struggles they're having, and what information they're looking for. So if you're looking at taking this as your stepping stone for future programming, it's always good to be able to check in with those families and go, hey, what are you seeing? Are we seeing mostly children requiring supports? Are we seeing mostly teenagers? Or are we seeing mostly adults? It gives you a better idea as to where to go. Amy, anything else you want to add to that?
A Kleenex is also important. As this is a time to chat and vent, there's lots of happy conversations, but things can get emotional too, so Kleenex.
The next step, what we talked about was your Welcome Toolkit would be another easy resource. So it's just giving you that quick reference to what resources are available in your area. It gives you more confidence in understanding where to be able to refer people, especially when you have somebody coming to your door going, hey, I'm not sure about this, I'm looking for a psychoeducational assessment, or hey, I've got a couple of things, my doctor recommended I have to see a pediatrician, but I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like, or a new family comes to the area going, hey, I need a pediatrician for X, Y, and Z, how do I go about and do that? Gives you a better idea of how to facilitate that, and especially when you get those phone calls from schools, because of their wait lists, and depending on what region you're in, they may be looking at supporting the family, but knowing that going through that process is not necessarily going to be conducive to their time period here or what their needs are. So just understanding kind of where to go, plus then it gives you a really good automatic go-to list for who you would like to have for guest speakers to add to your parent support group as well. Especially if you've got, key agencies in the area that are very experienced in certain areas that not necessarily all your families are aware of, and vice versa.
I was just going to say the same thing. I've found working on our toolkit from a staff perspective is also really helpful because if other staff are looking for resources within your agency, you have a list right there available who you could contact. It's also been helpful for me to start a list of which organizations have someone who speaks French because I need to be able to know who someone should request or who would be a good starting point if French is their first language. So I've been able to figure that out too just by asking and adding it to our toolkit.
Mm-hmm. And the most common things that we're seeing that start that whole conversation anyways is your things like speech and language pathologists, your occupational therapists, who's able to do your psychoeducational assessments, physiotherapy. Those tend to be the top ones that we see the most of. And then we've also got side things like tutoring, especially for kids that have learning disabilities who has that qualification, who has that understanding. And then your next big one would be funding, and that tends to be something that rolls into everything, but usually the funding part surprisingly tends to be the last thing on the list that people are asking for, because they're looking for where do I go first, and then it's the how do I make sure that I can afford to pay for this. Does that make sense?
Parents have also been a good resource to add to the toolkit because they will come to our parent support group meeting with a business card for someone new in the area or someone their doctor recommended, and then we're able to follow up and add that person's information to our toolkit too.
Anybody have any questions so far as we're going through any of this? Any particular areas that you wanted to expand upon in this? No? Okay. And then our next program that we talked about that would be an easy one for people to have up and running would be our Building Blocks Club. So it's the evidence-based social skills group that we utilize. We use Lego as the medium for that. So it helps with communication. It helps with kids understanding how to wait, how to take turns, how to make eye contact, and how to take direction. So that's the reason why we've put that forward, is because it's a program that really doesn't require a huge amount of resources. You need the Lego pieces, which is a little bit more expensive to get up and started. However, it lasts for a fairly lengthy time. It's also something that if you aren't able to run within your own MFRC, you can look at partnering with other agencies to be able to provide that. So, for example, in Trenton area, we've got a lot of partnerships with the school boards. So we have a lot of schools that actually run the program within their regular curriculum, so over lunch hour. Some of them will even run it in between certain classes for a particular set of kids that are looking for that or needing to work on certain skill sets. So that's a way in which to be able to, you know, still provide that programming while not exhausting the resources that you might not have available, or limited resources that you might have available within your MFRC. Partner agencies are another thing. So if you have another agency in the area that does, you know, play groups or particular focus in child programming, then that's another thing that you can look at too, is sharing those resources pieces. So we've seen a lot of success that way because we don't always necessarily have the staff available to run those groups, or especially during the times that it would be best for those kids. And then that way, too, for transportation for families, and that it's not a barrier either if you're able to run it during school hours within the school where they're already at. Amy, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so the curriculum for the Building Blocks Club is really good. The kids see it as coming together to play with Lego. The parents see it as the kids are learning and practicing their skills. So it's a win-win for everyone. It's not just free play Lego. There is an actual curriculum to it. The kids are working in groups of 3, and there's enough flexibility in the program once you've had training that you're able to adapt it for the kids in your group. So if a group of 3 is too many, you could put an adult into that third role as, you know, an adult staff or volunteer and work with 2 kids and you know, work up to expanding the group. So there's lots of flexibility in the curriculum to make it work depending on the needs of the child in your group.
This is also something that, too, that kids get to partner up with each other. So if you have a kid that's, for example, having difficulty with communication and trying to figure out how to word certain things to give people direction, then you can always pair them up with another kid. So we've even had it where we've had, you know, 4 to a group and 2 people have an assignment for one. So, for example, the roles are you've got the engineer, the builder, and the supplier. So the engineer is the one that reads the instructions in the kit. The supplier is the one that has to find the pieces, and then the builder is the one that has to put those pieces together. And they have to communicate with each other as to what pieces to look for, how to put them together, and all of that. So it builds upon those skill sets, and it also teaches the kids how to wait because they can't do their part until the person ahead of them does theirs, if that makes sense. So it gives you that dynamic, but like Amy said, they see it as we get to have fun and we get to play and we get to build things. And then there is a free build component afterwards where they get to be creative and they get to share their part of what it is that they built and why they built that and what it's, you know, what it means to them. So you're building upon that as well. So you've got the team aspect and then you have the individualized piece as well. Anybody have any questions? I feel like everyone's gone silent right now. No? Okay.
A question for you from Jonathan here. Yeah, you probably saw the comment, can't wait to start this in Borden. One of my questions was, what do you find the trickiest thing about setting up special needs programming?
The trickiest thing, honestly for us, the trickiest thing is making sure that you have the right person to facilitate the programming that you're looking to do. So somebody, that's your biggest thing. You need somebody who's going to be bubbly and open, somebody who feels comfortable in supporting individuals with multiple needs. And it's making sure that you have contingency plans, because there's always something that's going to happen that you didn't expect. So that would be the other piece. Otherwise, I mean, but that tends to be, it doesn't tend to be really a problem, so to speak, because anybody that we're doing this, the kids when they're coming, they're super excited, they're super happy. We don't tend to see a lot of concerns that way. So it's more of the back end piece of just making sure you feel comfortable and prepared, and your staff that's facilitating it feel comfortable and prepared and supported. Is really the trickiest part. And then your advertising is making sure that you've got the kids there and you're reaching the demographic that you're looking for. And the kids that attend, no matter what their needs are honestly really welcoming. So diagnosis doesn't really come into play that way. It's not like you have to focus anything on a particular diagnosis. It's open to anybody and everybody.
Okay. You've got a question online here. Any tips for families who do not live near a base?
Yeah, so that would be where your partnerships would come into play. So here, for example, we have a very small portion of our members that actually live within the base area. We have quite a large catchment area. So that's where our partnerships with other agencies and the schools come into play, because then that way they're still getting that service. They're still getting reached that way without having to come in you know, from home or from their outlying area, wherever that may be, because we have some people that live, you know, 45 minutes to an hour away from the MFRC here.
Okay, and if I was looking to set this up in the next month or so at my MFRC, let's pick the first one, parent support group. About how many hours per week do you think it would take me to set this up?
Amy, what do you figure?
If I had, it wouldn't be hours per week. It would be if I had a day to connect with a few parents, to book the room, and to find maybe a guest for the first meeting. That could be done in a day, and then following whatever your marketing plan is within your organization to do marketing for this program. Really a key to get started with parents is you want to have some parents who will come and who will invite other parents to come. And it's getting the first person, right? The leader who will invite a friend and who will remind their friends to sign up and come every month will be key to having the support group continue. So really a lot of it will be reaching out to a couple of key parents who you feel will come and will invite someone else. And to get that going.
Yeah, and the biggest thing too for us is that if you're able to get connected with the spouse group, the spouses page, usually most bases have a Facebook spouses page.
Yeah.
If you can get connected with one of the spouses and have them add you to that, so that way, or at least somebody that is willing to share your stuff to it, and that's a really good way to be able to make those connections, because we get a lot of families asking through that as to what programs are available or how they can get supported, who they get in contact with, that kind of thing too. That's a really good way to make that connection as well.
Yeah, with any of these programs, really it's about relationships. It's building a relationship with families so they're comfortable with you, they're comfortable coming to programs, they aren't feeling judged, they feel welcomed, and that they're comfortable inviting others to come. Someone that they've just met at a doctor's appointment, someone they've just met at a welcome event, as if they just moved to the area, but just to reach out and say, you know what, I went to this thing, I felt really comfortable, and you should come too, and maybe we'll, learn something, benefit, make some new friends.
Mm-hmm. And making sure that they build that sense of trust with you too, that you're listening to what it is that they're talking about, right? So when they're asking for certain things or they're making suggestions and stuff, that you're following through on that. That's the other biggest, I'd say one of the other big things to consider, which is why the Parent Support Group is a great starting point with looking at what type of programming to offer, because you're getting it straight from who's going to be accessing those services.
Mm-hmm. So what are you thinking of in terms of follow-through with families? Like what would be one of the common types of requests that you get that you would follow through with?
Someone might be new to the area and their child has just started school. The school's making suggestions saying something is off, and they don't know where to go first. They don't have a family doctor, and they don't even know where to begin in terms of referrals and supports. So that's the overwhelming phone call or person who would come to the Parent Support Group just looking for help. So it's that kind of opportunity that we would take to build trust with that person and start making connections. So start using our toolkit in terms of resources and support them to start making appointments and figure out where to go first. But that's the first opportunity for trust to build a relationship, is to help them find something right off the bat to get them started.
And the back end of that is making sure that you have those connections to your local schools, so that way they know that as soon as they have a family that comes through the door that, hey, they're new to the area, they automatically make that referral to the MFRC, so that way they know that they're going to have that connection and start that right off the hop. And especially if they have a child with special needs or any child that's requiring extra supports, if they make that connection right off the get-go, then families also aren't feeling pressured. They're not feeling like they're being judged, and they're feeling supported. And you have that automatic open communication. Plus, you develop that relationship with the school where you can have those open conversations. That when you're getting that phone call from a family who's overwhelmed or who's feeling that they're being pushed in a certain way, or that the school's saying that, something's something's not working, or I'm not feeling supported, then you can mitigate that, right? You're able to figure out where that disconnect is and be able to hopefully get ahead of that before that happens, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. For the toolkits, would you guys be willing to share a copy of what you use just as a starting place for some of the MFRCs who are looking to set one up?
Yeah, of course. So some things that we do, just to give you a blanketed idea of kind of what we've got in one. So we've got your standard welcome page, so just kind of what it is that the toolkit's going to have in it, who to connect with at the MFRC for if you have any other questions, any concerns, and what type of services that we can provide for supports. The next would be your typical questions about diagnosis, kind of how that works, who's able to do a psychoeducational assessment, what you're looking for that way. And then we go into an agency list as to what agencies there are in the area, what they provide, and what their contact information is. Would be your basic starting point. And then you build upon there. So based on the resources that you've got or what families are asking for, then you can go into your funding options and what's available, not just government, but your local community, and any other type of assessments that you can think about. So whether it's occupational therapy assessment, how that looks, what that includes. Amy, anything else that you add to yours? You had a couple of extra things in there.
Well, I would put our toolkit like an actual binder that we have. So we do have a binder of resources available, just like you did in Trenton. So I would just put all that together, and really any welcome info at your MFRC that would be relevant to that specific family in terms of if you have mental health walk-in opportunities or how they would get in touch with someone to make an appointment or children's services or anything else. I would add to all, add everything at once so they are leaving with everything. Yeah.
And then understanding the school system, especially if you're talking about different provinces, because it's very unique to each province. So that would be the other suggestion, is understanding how that works and having basically a cheat sheet as to what that looks like. Because that's one of the biggest questions that we get, especially from families that are coming from, say BC or somewhere. The process for supports through the school system is very different than it is in Ontario or Alberta or any other province for that matter.
Okay, that's fantastic. Are there any other questions? We've got about one minute left. I don't see any more in the chat, or feel free to unmute your mic. All right, so thank you so much to Trenton and Petawawa for all this great info. This is fantastic. You saw that I ran out of space on your slide, so I had to start writing on a new one. So that's just fantastic, the amount of info that you've been able to offer. I'll just put up the questions, comments, or concerns slide here for you folks so that you'll be able to contact either Orlana or Amy at your leisure. And Orlana and Amy, if you could just stay on after other people have signed off. For the rest of you, have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.